This video is going to show you solo Grandmaster Nightfall on the weekly featured strike, which this week is Birthplace of the Vile. We are doing this on a Void Hunter. All three classes are available. You can do it on all three, but I'm just starting with the Hunter as that's the most convenient for me, with me not having lots of time. So the build is an infinite invisibility setup. That's potentially the best invisibility setup in the game, providing that there's a lot of enemies. It's either that or the double smoke bomb one, right? You can use either or. Those are the top two invisibility builds that I would recommend. The one I'm using is Graviton Forfeit, which is fantastic for that infinite invisibility that I'm saying with Trapper's Ambush. So how it works is that you need to have 100% strength. If you don't, even tier 9, you're going to feel as though it's not going to work. It's very particular with this. You've got to run 100% strength. And there's different ways of getting around that, because I know that that's not a stat that people spec for, I understand. But there's Radiant Light that helps you get, there's Powerful Friends that helps you get the mobility. You may as well pair the two together, to be honest. So spec for that, look into your vault, your old strength gear that you probably used to run before the resilience buff, because I'm sure people did have a good strength build for the chest plate or the Graviton Forfeit. So I'll get that old armor out, and as I say, that's what you want to do. 100% strength, but you need also 100% resilience. So well, you don't need it. You could get away with tier 9. If I'm being honest, you could get away with tier 9, and also there's some fragments if you use Echo of Instability, which gives you volatile rounds anyways, which is fantastic. So you may as well use that, and you get plus 10 strength if you're struggling for stats. Most of my fragments were set up for stats, apart from Echo of Persistence, which is needed. You must have Echo of Persistence on for this setup to work. If you don't, you're not going to get that double time on your invisibility. So this starting section, right, now you notice that I haven't had any problems taking the overload. The overloads can be a pain. What you need to understand is that you need to clear no ads until the overload pushes, the first overload. Clear no ads at all, don't even touch one, because if you touch one ad, if you kill one, you spawn in the second overload, and you don't want to fight two overloads at the same time. Once you've melted the first overload, you can then do what you want. It's then easy. But the combat loop is if you melt an ad, because it's so easy to do that, then you're going to get two overloads, and they're going to do their immunity tethers, and it's going to struggle. You're going to struggle. So we've got a tether here. We're using this rock as cover. Some of the ads ran in front of my Mobius Quiver tether. If you hit your tether dead on the unstop, you will kill unstop in one go. But my goal didn't pay off, and it's a bit of an RNG positioning thing on the ads. If you can tether champ and then double rocket champ, and you've tethered the mini boss, you'll actually kill the mini boss as well as the unstop. It's one of those things. I'm not going to reset my run just because I didn't get that. It's just a case of we would then slowly take out the mini boss and stuff like that. The Unstoppable's still alive, that's fine. We'll switch to Witherhoard for that. We're using Royal Entry. Now I know the precision frame rocket launchers got nerfed, they got hit. The reason for that, I believe, is because they have tracking built in, and they buffed aggressive frame and adaptive frame rockets like Hothead and Bump in the Night and stuff like that. Those do more damage, but in this scenario it does not matter because it's void acute burn. So even then, you would still want to use a good void rocket over Hothead. You could use Hothead if you've got the clown cartridge roll. Field prep clown cartridge, you could still use it in this, but for me, Royal Entry is still better in this situation. Don't misquote me. Hothead is a better rocket, but not when it's void acute burn. It isn't, which it's void burn. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because this is just capturing the plate. So how this works is you obviously just going to do a Trapper's Ambush, but you get an infinite Trapper's Ambush depending on how many ads are close. If they're super close, watch your strength bar go up super quick. So you can see how quickly I captured that plate. You do it in one phase, basically. But don't kill any ads, because you get more ads. We know that there's not infinite ads, but like 7, 8 waves linked to the plate. But if you don't kill any enemies, you'll only have one wave. Now, I'm just speeding this little bit of footage up because I've made a not a fatal error. I've done a little testing in the run, right? And it was horrible. But what you need to realise is I do a lot of this stuff so that you don't have to, right? So that you know what not to do. Because why? Because I've done the what not to do, so then I know what to do. But in this run, you're seeing me practicing trying to do something. What I'm trying to do is manipulate this overload so that we can kill him early. Now, the scout Vouchsafe is very good, but it experiences range drop off to a certain extent. It's 200 RPM. I mean, it's got a lot of range, and explosive payload obviously is going to help that, but you can see that I'm not winning with this champ. So this is why I've just kept the footage sped up. Basically, don't do the strat that I'm going to do, that I'm trying to do here, because it wasn't paying off. Alright, so just leave it. The overload, the AI of the overload will change once you push up. The overload will actually hug the unstoppable and the ads at the back of the map. What I was trying to do is isolate the overload from the unstoppable. You can do it, just I'm getting unlucky. Like, look at that, how unlucky that is. He's literally one shot, so you can do it. What I was just trying to do is deal with that overload sooner than you should. Sooner to get an advantage so that you don't need to deal with the overload later, but it hasn't paid off. All it's done is cost me 5 minutes. 3 minutes, whatever. So don't do it. What you can do, though, is actually do that strat I've just showed you, but right here at this rock. Be a little bit more consistent to do it. You've got a decision to make, right? Do you either deal with the unstoppable or the overload? Generally speaking, the unstoppable, because you're going to find it difficult to deal with the overload from this range. And another thing is getting your stops with Witherhoard, right? So you're gonna find that annoying, as opposed to if you had a hand cannon on, you could stop that ogre right away. But we're not using a hand cannon, of course. We're using unstoppable GL, so that's where Witherhoard loses points. It can't stun champs from a range efficiently every time when you would want to, because you've got to get a good shot, of course. So we're gonna have to push up. We're going to have to push up, which we can do that anyway. So I'll push here. I'm going to get an invis. As I say, throughout this run, pay attention to my smoke. I've actually dodged there, but pay attention to how much smoke energy I get when I actually don't dodge, and you'll see how much. There's a little trick with Witherhoard. See that? I stunned him twice with one shot. That's why, because obviously there's a timer for how often unstoppables can be stunned. But on that second stun, Witherhoard's still stuck. You switch back to Witherhoard, it'll class as a second stun. That's just a little trick that you can do. Now it's just the overload to deal with. This is how you would generally deal with the overload. It's not too threatening. They are just lurkers. It isn't too much of a problem. It's just the tethers. You need to realise there's different tethers, obviously, with the scorn. So there's Arc, Solar, and Void. Void is by far the worst. So this, I think they have the ability to do, this one has the ability to do both Arc and Void, but some of them do Solar. I think maybe the Solar, see there's Solar Captains, there's the Void Snipers, and then there's this one. This one just does like, it does Void, but it's not a sniper. So you need to recognize which overload, you're not just up against that overload, right? It depends which overload are you up against. If you're up against a sniper one, good luck. Because you can still get one shot by those. I actually got one shot the run before this at the very end on phase 2. Was it phase 2? Yeah, phase 2, where you go back into a bigger room, and the overload sniped me from miles away when I was looking at some lurkers. I have void resist concussive damp. Now I'm sure that you can still survive a void snipe with one void resist. The reason why I went void resist concussive is because concussive will help us survive against melee based ads. See, when they do that, it's the wraiths. If they hit you, you're going to burn. because they're solar, you're going to take a bit of burn damage. But concussive dampener will help you from surviving that a little bit if it happens. You shouldn't be letting any wraiths melee you though. But I'm just saying if it happens, which they have quite a lunge distance, and you'll notice it more when you get to the boss fight. This little room here is not difficult at all. You want to clear out as many ads as you can until a lot of the ads are de-aggroed. These two captains are your priority now. Their burns are RNG. Sometimes it's arc, there's generally arc solar or void solar. But get a tether down. I'm using rockets here, I'm spamming it because I'm sort of kind of annoyed anyways that I haven't got much ammo. Probably my own fault because I tried that little strap earlier on and it's obviously penalised me, so that's fine. I'll use it because I can take overloads out without heavy anyways. Now this is a void sniper, look. So this is a void sniper, so that we've got to pay attention. I wasn't convinced with this overload because I didn't know whether it was pushing or not. See, two things that happen actually because Witherhoard's unstoppable. It's still stunned. It doesn't stun, but it staggers an overload champion backwards. Sometimes behind cover, which is not your favour. Sometimes it is your favour because it stops them from sniping. It interrupts. Witherhoard will interrupt a snipe. Very good to know. But ultimately, how you fighting those snipers is that you need to be strafing in and out of cover. If you're not doing that, you can't just stand in front of one because there is a chance. See, they're bugged because they're technically doing two snipes, not one, because how the gun works. So sometimes you can randomly be one shot by a void sniper in this, despite since the resistance buffs, because we haven't had this GM since the resistance was different, completely different to now. Even though I know resistance is getting adjusted, but that's still a thing. You can still get one shot by snipers is what I'm trying to tell you, so you need to pay utmost attention to them. This little room here is going to be a room later on. Now, any ammo drops you get here, when you get to the boss fight, you can save these ammo drops. I recommend try and save, and if you get any bricks and you've got a healthy amount of heavy, don't pick up that brick. Why? For what? There's not a lot happening right now anyways. Until the boss fight. It's the boss fight that's going to be the most difficult part for you. Not really getting up to the boss. Two raiders here because I've actually rushed a little bit this room. Generally I clear out all ads, but I didn't this time. Mainly because I'd made that error with the overload earlier. Nearly pretty weak there. Need to keep an eye on my health a little bit better. I need to take down this raider. Even one raider is a nuisance to you whilst trying to deal with an overload solo in this. So all raiders, champs must be isolated. That is the key thing. You must always try to isolate champs, especially at the boss fight. It's critical that you do it. So I'm going to deal with the overload from here because there is a place you can jump up, but I'm just going to do it from here because I've got the scout on. Makes sense. You don't take too much damage because this champ's actually doing arc. Notice, so it's doing those arc cluster things. Concussive dampener will help out against those. A concussive dampener will help out against a whole array of things. So yeah, double void resist is really handy, but I think the best resistance, to be fair, is void, one concussive. Because if a void sniper is going to one shot because it's bugged, then it's going to one shot, isn't it? I guess you just have to pay smart attention to all the snipers because there's some snipers at the boss. Not a lot, luckily, but there's a few. This is the plate room here, so we've got two unstoppables. So we're going to get a stun with Witherhoard first, then super. Then we're going to try and get some double rockets. Even if I don't stun that second one, it didn't matter. I was trying to get a lot of damage in while that tethers up to try and clear out any of the ads, because we're getting a lot of damage in, right? So if you like tether a key target and then you do some rockets or whatever it might be, or linear shots, you'll do massive damage to the ads surrounding if they're caught in that tether. Morbius Quiver isn't as good as the other tether for that, but Morbius Quiver's got the damage where the other tether hasn't got. You'll get more tethers, but I mean that would be a different build. You'd be using Orpheus rigs, which I don't recommend because you need an invisibility build. Omnioculus, that's the chess player. I totally forgot what the name of it was. Either that or Graviton Forfeit. I think for this, Graviton's better. But it would work with Omnioculus. I could put on Omnioculus, do very similar to what I'm doing now, and probably succeed as well in a very similar fashion. So there's no right or wrong answer. Preference. People quote me too much, like, just because I'm saying right now Graviton's better, that doesn't mean they're flat out that it is better. I mean, it's better for what I'm doing right now because there's a ton of ads. Graviton's going to give you more invisibility than Omnioculus because there's tons of ads that surround you. See, Graviton has a secret perk. The more ads surround you, the more smoke energy you get back. So that's why my reasoning. But Omnioculus, if you've got a good one, use it. When you're capturing the plates, obviously we're doing that. Always invis somewhere else, because Trapper's Ambush, there's that brief moment of time where the ads are aggroed on your last location. You need to learn that. Do not just re-invis on the same section. That will get you killed. So now the final unstoppable champ for this little section. We'll get a stun plus grenade. We'll get volatile to proc. Hopefully that will clear out most of the ads. All the wraiths are killed. Champ's half HP. The goal there though was to clear out all wraiths because they're a problem to you if the unstoppable's still alive, because then you've got multiple targets on you at once. It's that isolation thing. Now we haven't got an elemental well build on. Yeah, I know that, but because I'm having to invest so many stats. So class P's has solo operative we can clear. That means no more mods on class P's. I've got powerful friends on Radiant Light. There's not enough room to sort of like put an elemental well build on. So I just had elemental ordnance on. Yeah, I've got nothing to pair it with, but you will get a bump to grenade energy for every well that you pick up. It is a base amount of grenade energy, and this is true for unmatched wells. To be honest, there's pointless me talking about it because wells are changing anyways. It's all the mods are changing Nightfall. So that even makes more sense for me to not even really like do a well build. What's the point? There's not much point right now because the game's changing. So we're just waiting for that Nightfall and for all the changes. So the two biggest dangers in this particular room is the stasis Scorn that chase you. They can catch you off guard, and obviously the overload at the back of the map, which has potential of one shot. But if you start dealing with the overload, not realizing that you haven't killed out all the stasis enemies, because they can freeze you, then you can be frozen and then sniped. So you can get ambushed like this. Now obviously there's a radar on. Well, not obvious, but there is a radar on. I'm not sure why. I haven't looked at the mods properly, but why is there a radar? It's Grandmaster. I don't get it. But use it. You may as well use it. It's now an opportunity to use radar, so it's very useful, especially at the farm boss and stuff. If ads teleport and stuff like that, which can happen and melt you. That has happened to me, especially if it's like a wraith that teleports on top of you. But with this room, you have an opportunity to farm ammo for the boss fight, because remember, this is a room that you're going to come to. It's the same room at the boss fight, and it'll be considered the same room in terms of ammo. So if you have special bricks on the floor, they will stay here. They will not despawn. The ammo won't despawn. So if you got if you get lucky, you're getting a couple of bricks. Remember that. Remember that you've got a couple of bricks. Like there's a brick right there. I'm not going to spend it. So what I'm going to do is just kill overload with Witherhoard plus Scout, which me double rocket and this champ has no bearing on the run. Like, why would you do that? That's what you need to start to sort of figure out. Which champions should you be mounting down? Which ones you can take at a slower pace if needed to save on ammo for a later phase. This one you want to head glitch, and also you need to realize that the sniper that the overload has, it charges up. You know, like the hobgoblins for the Vex race, it's the same thing. It'll charge and then decharge. So he'll never end up sniping because you're strafing in and you're strafing up and down those that stairwell, because he'll decharge his shot if he cannot see you. So that's what I'm doing. So it's not. So it's sort of like head glitching in a sense. So it means he won't snipe. So make sure you use that little tactic, and that way you don't even need to rocket, because there's going to be plenty of opportunities to use that. So this little section is double overload here. You want to take out all the adds first. Let some push, and then you can actually jump up to a safe place if you want, and the adds will actually leave the overlords and push you. So, but just be careful with that little tactic. I just prefer, I'm just going to take out all the stalkers, and then we're going to push to this safe zone here. So sometimes the overlord will put a void tether out of your sight. The tethers actually don't last forever. Obviously shoot the solar, any solar or arc ones that you get, you shoot. Now this tether's about finished. So we've just got the stunning time. What you need to realise is, when you stun an overlord, if there is a tether up anywhere, that tether will despawn. So if there's a tether about to hit your location, it won't matter, because it'll despawn. That's if you get the stun. If you're not stunning that champ, then it isn't going to be the case. So we'll clear out this champ here. He's regenerating. Why, I don't know. My only answer to this is that I have full auto on. So there's a setting in, if you didn't know, there's a setting in the game to make all weapons fully automatic. This might be interfering with overload rounds. I don't know, because he should have been stunned there. He was about dead as well. Because I am using that full auto option, but maybe just tap fire on champs rather than, because it is really good just to full auto with a scout on a champ like this. But sometimes, today at least, whether it's the game, because we know the game's in a bad state, maybe it's that. Sometimes the regen, and they definitely shouldn't be, because this is like, well, it was always known scouts and bows are so, well, even hand cannons, any weapon I guess with explosive payload is very, very consistent on overloads. Right? It was like literally the best perk to have for overload champs. So it's not the gun, might have been my timing, maybe not, I'm not sure, but I would just put full auto on. It changes the game, makes it super easy. Because you can full auto every single thing. It's quite nice. But maybe just tap fire your scout on overloads, and maybe do it a little slower. It's actually a bit more consistent if you just slow your pace down a little bit with the scout rather than just full auto burst. Generally it's not a problem, but I had it today, a couple of runs where the overloads will just regen, and I was like, why? Could be the full auto setting. That's the only difference. These stalkers push like crazy. I couldn't believe how fast. See, one thing about the stalkers, on the on GM mode, when they rush you faster. They come at you so fast compared to like Master Nightfalls or below. It's just because AI is improved for GM difficulty, which is noticeable on some enemy types. You see, you wouldn't notice that if you played in a fire team, because you're melting everything in a fire team. See, a lot of people are saying GMs are easier now. Yeah, but they're still a difficult solo, right? I feel as though the people who are saying it's easier, the people who are speedrunning a team. Team and solo is worlds apart. It's like playing a different game. Yeah. Certain GMs are still going to be slightly difficult, like Lightblade will still be difficult. Birthplace of the Vow, still difficult. Glassware, difficult, not as difficult. But I actually quite enjoy Glassware now. It's one of my it's turned into one of my favourites. Birthplace, I'm still not very accustomed to Birthplace, if I'm being completely honest, because we've barely had it up as a GM, and I haven't got much hours in this one, if I'm being completely honest, which probably explains the slow run. It was a slow run, this. I was actually quite disappointed at the time, but I wasn't here to speedrun it anyways from the first place, but I was expecting a 40-minute clear, not going into the 50s. But that was, I guess, playing super reserved at the boss. I killed every single phase of enemy. I didn't skip, which I probably should have just skipped damage, which I recommend that you can do, but I'll explain it when I get to the boss, I guess. You can stop these unstoppables from here, it's just getting that shot. Like I say, things like this slow you down. Like with a hand cannon or something, you get your stun right away. With Witherhoard, it loses its points when it's at range. The better shot you are with Witherhoard, the easier it'll be, of course. But that is from some range, so we'll get a stun on the closer one. That's a stun. Hopefully I can double rocket in time. I think it's worth the damage. See, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to kill at least one of the Unstoppables. Because what happens is the Unstoppables can teleport. There's a chance of it. To negate that, if you clear one of the Unstoppables, like one of the champs, this will make it less likely for an Unstoppable to teleport on top of you, because they can. If there's two up and you go to those two pillars where I'm at in front of me, one can teleport right on top of you. It's happened. So I'm trying to sort of not want that to happen, which is why I'm playing a little bit more passive and trying to clear at least one of them from here. We got double stun, that was a good shot. Now we'll get in with the scout. Now we got a stick. So that was just lucky. Sometimes you get the shot, sometimes you won't. I'm not a bad Witherhoard user. But you ain't always going to get that shot. Now look at that, did you see? Unstoppable is teleported. That's fine though, because we were nowhere near the Unstoppable for it to bother us. So it's not like they'll teleport on top of this bridge, but it is a thing. We'll get a stun around that corner, plus grenade. Hopefully the champ sits in, not yet. We've missed our shot, the Unstoppable's going to rush us, that's fine, we'll do Invis. This is probably a better way of doing it anyway. Invis pass, play from here. Then you can get a moment of surprise on the champ. We'll double rocket here because there's tons of heavy on the floor. And then that's all the way up into the boss. 30 minutes. Probably could have saved easy 10 minutes on this. Completely. But you can see it's not too difficult to get to the boss. The difficulty is going to come in at the boss fight itself. So, in terms of what you need, I recommend that you at least have a super, which you should have from killing all the champs. Max Witherhoard, and as many rockets as you've got. You can use Taipan, the linear fusion rifle. The ammo will go further, but I prefer rockets in this because there's times when you need burst damage, and I feel as though rockets are a little bit better. It plays a bit of a better role, especially on a hunter when you can come out of invisibility. So what I chose to do is not melt the overload at the start of this fight. The reason being is because the boss pushed and I was uncertain whether I could survive that engagement, because one stomp plus a little bit of fire from some of the stalkers, maybe a nade, you're dead, and that would feel a little bit, that would feel like it stole the solo off you, because sometimes you get that kill on the overload as soon as you spawn in, sometimes you won't. Because on the run before this, I didn't get the see. What happened is the tether aimed at a stalker rather than the champ. If that happens because of aim assist console, then it happens. So what I prefer to do, because you're going to get, you've only got 3 champs, 1 champ per phase, so it's not massive of a risk. But there are snipers. Like there's a sniper right there. I'm trying to focus that sniper because the snipers have one-shot capability, or can get you in the red very fast. The overload will stay at the back of the map. The only thing, by leaving the overload up like this, the only trouble that's going to be is that there'll be tethers. Sometimes, so the boss will put a void tether up, so will the overload sometimes. Your goal is to not teleport, your goal is to strafe between the left and right box cover-wise. Barely go to the back of the map, you don't need it, only when there's ads behind, like behind the left and right, which I'll point that out when I do go to the front of the map. But for the most part, I'll be at the back. And you're just going between the ads, left and right, doing Witherhoard, Invis. Because sometimes, see how quickly the boss actually can teleport as well. And you know, he does that immunity phase, the boss, where you can't actually do any damage. So the boss can surprise how quickly it moves between left and right. It can be super quick. Plus the stalkers, you get caught by a void grenade for any length of time. People say we're tanky, but you stand in a stalker void grenade, see how tanky you are with that. T10 Resil, you will die very fast. Look at that. See my HP. So resilience has its purpose at the minute. People are going on about it like, oh, yeah, it's getting nerfed 10%. But it's got a purpose. GMs. You know, like I played the game when resilience didn't work. Does anyone remember that? Oh yeah, tier 3 resilience, that's all you needed. How boring was that? Oh yeah, resilience only works in lost sectors. That wasn't any system. At least we've got a system where the resilience, it says what it is. So if you're at a tier 10, obviously it's going to be 30% for Nightfall. Great. It's giving you something. It's telling you this is what it is, as opposed to what the game used to be. Resilience did not work from 2017 to to Duality Dungeon. So we've only had a bit of time with this new resilience. People have twined and complained, and now we lose it. Well, we lose a little portion of it. Yet they were happy for the last couple of years, since 2017, to play the game, where things would randomly one-shot, stuff like this, and it was like kind of dumb to not run resilience. But now we have the opportunity to run resilience. All they've done, in my opinion, is fixed a broken stat. It's not broken now, it works. You could argue 30% still too much, maybe so, but I'd still rather have what we've got now. The game's far better. Well, not maybe better, but more consistent to play, especially solo wise. That will then give you a negative effect that solo's easier. Yeah, I know, but you can't have everything. The game's got to tell you what it is. It's got to do what it says on the tin. You can't just have it, oh, well, sometimes you get randomly one shot and people like this. No, that doesn't work. You've got to get the values right, and they have got it. If 30% is still too much, knock it back another 10. But I wouldn't go any less than 20%. If they do that, then get rid of acute burns. You know, I like it when they give you a chance to build into a stat that excels in endgame. Any stat, and that's what resilience is doing. I should be rewarded for running a tier 10 resil. That's just how I look at it. Now you could say, right, well, maybe have different classes. Have Titan the tank class. If we want to make it role specific, yeah, people don't want that. I would actually prefer that. Make it so it's role specific. Hunters are glass cannons. They do the most damage always. They've got a higher multiplier for super damage. Titans have a higher resilience, can get a higher resilience than other characters. I would like role specific in the game, because Titan and Warlock and Hunter are the same, basically, in the game. There's not roles in the game, and I want roles. Like, you know, that's what I would prefer. But it's standardized. You know, so that's what I think it should be. That would be more impactful. So if you choose a hunter, you've chose a glass cannon setup, right? Just the most damage, but it's the weakest for resilience. Warlock's the middle ground ability spam. Titans, maybe nerf their ability spam a little bit, but make them the tankiest class. That's how I would like it. But they're never going to do that, because then it would have set a third of your player base. With this boss here, all I'm doing is I've chose this pillar because I find that fighting from the front of the room is better than at the back, because at the back he stomps, he goes near the box, it's annoying, right? Up here the boss will be idle, right, and almost muted, and the biggest threat is getting hit too much by the void stuff. But really, just straight from behind that pillar that I chose, it's really good. I'm picking up ammo before teleport. If you noticed, I had lone Witherhoard, but I was just making sure I've got a bit of Witherhoard for when we go into the next room. Boss is immune at this point. We then port. This is the room we saw earlier on. Any ammo drops that you got in that room earlier on will be here. So I haven't used any rockets, barely, right? Barely used it. I've used a bit of rockets on the boss, I believe, before. But other than that, I'm maintaining a healthy amount, because it's very critical that you don't spam all your rockets on phase 1 unless you remember that you had like 3 bricks in here. If you did, that's fine. But what you need to understand is the boss room gets harder for every single phase. So phase 1, the ad spawns, they're not too difficult. They're more stalkers and stuff, but then wraiths get into the equation on phase 2 and they chase you more. So having more heavy at the later on phases is more beneficial to you, especially on phase 3. Like if you could you know, that means you could rocket a group of enemies. Say, you know, you didn't have time for Witherhoard or whatever, and you needed to spawn kill a group of enemies. You've got rockets available to you, and if you've got bricks on the floor +9, you can sort of combat the fact that the final phase is the toughest, but you've got plenty of heavy, which makes it not as hard as it maybe would have been if you didn't have any ammo at all. So I'm saying you manage your ammo accordingly. You obviously want to be rocketing champs and stuff like this, unless you're tethering them. Now, the tether should work as long as you get direct hits. Mobius Quiver's only 2 shots without Orpheus Rig, so you get 2 usage. It will still kill the champ providing that you get your stun correct and that no ad or boss gets in the way of your tether. If it does, you might have failed the kill, and I end up doing that. You'll see a failure of when I try to kill a champ with my Mobius Quiver and it messes up because the boss aim assist messes up my tether. But there's ways and means around it, of course. This is phase 2, so phase 2 has an unstoppable champ. When you initially come here, from my understanding, the champ's spawn is random. It can be middle, left or right or back. Look at, as soon as you go through that portal, check the 2 ad waves, because there'll be 2 spawns. Luckily for me, they were both on right, so it gave me a good guess on where the unstoppable was going to be. So I got an initial stun. I'll go behind the champ, and this is one we're going to tether. It's totally worth tethering there. Either that or double rocket, but I opted just to use my tether because I'm going to get a tether back. Notice on this phase though, there's 2 ogres. Well, there's 1 unstop, 1 standard hive abomination, right? Not hive, scorn, sorry. So you want to make sure that you take the abomination out fast, because they are threatening. Then at this point, you've got the wraiths and lurkers. That is the ad wave. They're actually both threatening because they're both melee based enemies. Lurkers can melt as well. Like, they might be just small ads, but they also melt. Wraiths are not to be... If a wraith's approaching you, don't invis on top of a wraith, because the wraith might melee you before you get invis. Because Trapper's Ambush, it's not instant like a smoke used to be when you'd throw it at your feet or with a dodge. It takes time to kick in. But a thing about it is you're vulnerable for like half a second in Trapper's Ambush. Because yeah, you've went invis, but the ad, like I said earlier, knows your last location of where you invised. Guess what? You're stuck. It's not very mobile, Trapper's Ambush, so you've got to pick and choose where you do your trappers. So this is where you do your strafe and your left and right, but be close enough to the ads to get enough smoke back. So look, I'm being close, I'm close, look at the invis. Well, I've dodged there, but I don't always dodge because my mobility stat's terrible. But it doesn't need to be so good because main strength, it's all, you just need good strength stat. The mobility is not a factor too much. You only rely on your dodge if it's a where you've messed up your main smoke. But you shouldn't be messing up your main smoke, but there'll be times you do. So you can see, like, you know, I'm getting tons of smoke there when you're just around the boss. The boss's stomp does not one-shot. It used to on the old GMs. It now thankfully doesn't, but it gets you super weak, which I think's within line for this. I mean, look at the boss room. We've got nowhere for cover. I don't feel this other boss should be able to one-shot you. Especially that the boss can one-shot you behind a box. I think that's balanced in my books. But you've got to be cautious, as I say, of that stomp. What you need to realise is as well, on this setup at least, on a Warlock it's a bit more aggressive. On a Titan you can play a bit more aggressive, where you have to actually to survive. If you mess up your abilities at all, it could be a wipe. Unless you're using blinding grenades. So, you're going to get better ad clear on a Titan all day. You're going to get better ad clear on a Warlock Voidwalker, yes. But for people who are less familiar with this, the Hunter's going to be the better choice. Which is why I've done this class first. I may do a Titan run, probably will do a Titan run actually. I'm actually quite a fan of Titan on this. So I will do a run like that. It won't be with Witherhoard. I only went Witherhoard because we're on Hunt and Nightstalker, so it just goes well. Osteo's a really good pick for this, because it deals with overloads good. It deals with boss damage decent, even though it's only your primary, and it's good at melting that red bars. You know, Witherhoard, it's got obviously nerfed, so the pool on the floor doesn't do as much damage. Well, it does do the same damage, but it doesn't last as long. So Witherhoard, I feel it not being as useful as it did when this initially came out, when I'd done this run with Nightstalker, because the pool doesn't last as long. Still super useful though, just as I say, not as useful, but it's still probably going to be the go-to pick when you play a Nightstalker like this. So again, we're just taking each enemy wave as it comes. The tether is going to be your biggest thing. What you can try and do is put a Witherhoard on the tether, then try and clear out some of the adds or scout the tether down. By the time you do that though, you haven't got a lot of time. Use your radar, like they're closing in fast. So invis up again. Wraiths, don't take any risks with wraiths. And always keep an eye on the boss. Where's the boss? Left, right. Always be on the opposite side of the boss if you can. Even if you've invised on that same side, if the boss hasn't moved over, fine. Just stay on the side you are. But don't stay in the same spot. Because again, adds could nade that spot you just invised on. So you need to be quite mobile. You can't just you can't just sit in one spot even though it is invis. Moment to get some damage in. Boss loop to the left, to the right there. I believe this is the final add, final two adds, then we can do boss damage. By the way, don't worry about boss damage at all. You're gonna absolutely melt. Oh, there's another wave here. My bad. There's quite a couple of waves on this. Get Witherhoard Grenade down. It's clearing out most of the lurkers. Thankfully, I've got a good discipline stat. So I've got a good discipline stat, good strength, and good resilience. Problem is not good enough on the mobility side of things. But again, 100% strength's enough, providing that you play in this way. Anytime a Wraith pushes like that, stop with Witherhoard. Witherhoard's going to stop the Wraith because it's unstoppable rounds. So it also works on minors. The melee based enemies in this melt. So you do not want to be getting hit by them at all. Now we're ready for boss damage. That was the final wave. So we're going to get to our boss DPS position. And then we're just going to focus on getting our Witherhoard shot. The boss is easily Witherhoarded from here as well. Whereas at the back of the map, it's not as good. We're going to tether as well here. May as well, because we don't need a tether now until phase 3 when we re-enter the boss room. So we can do massive damage. So literally, you know, we don't need to worry about boss damage at all. Potentially what I should have done and changed with this run is, it will be a bit risky though, but it wouldn't be too bad, is when you get to phase 3, kill your overload when you ever do that. When you do that, there'll be still add waves spawning, but you could just invis Witherhoard the boss. Just invis up, skip to the right side or the left side, whatever, Witherhoard the boss, and then keep doing that, rinse and repeat. There is a risk though, because there's gonna be a lot of enemies up, so there's a little risk with it. But that's what I mean. I'm good enough to do that. That's what I should have done. I don't know why I didn't, but I went with the entire phase. I suppose you can see every single ad and everything like that, so you can see the enemy spawns, because there is a lot. So this is final. This is the final phase. Boss should be immune now. Witherhoard ammo rockets is healthy. Nearly fell off map there. I don't know what that was about. That would have been unfortunate if we did. So I don't want to take any risks because we're 46 minutes in. So I'm going to wait for the stasis Ravengers to push. There's 4 in total, I believe. 2 left, 2 right. But they're slow at getting to you. So the best thing is to do is just sort of wait up top. They eventually do come to your position. Because any Ravengers up at all, they could come behind you, freeze you while you're facing the overload. And you might not realise it. So take out your stasis Ravengers. And don't use the super on the overload neither. Because you want a super. Always start with a super when you get to where the boss on phase 3, because there's going to be a champ and adds. So it's an emergency super there if you need it. I might not have used it, but it's there if I would have needed it and something happened. Rather than using your super here on one champ, what's the point? You can avoid the champ very easily. Do some damage to these stasis enemies here. I think that's all of them. Now we'll just clear out the remainder adds, go for the overload in the end. The overload can't see you from here, I don't think, or can sometimes snipe you from here. I'm not sure if it was on this platform or the one above. Definitely on the one above, like one in front of me. If the overload sees you from there, will snipe you, definite. So when you're shooting your ads, just glance to your left. Where's that overload? Is he behind a pillar or is he strafing close to where you are? Like, or got an angle at you, on you. There's loads of bricks here, so we're going to use some heavy. We may as well to refill up max for heavy. So we'll get our stun first. We missed our Witherhoard, unfortunately. Keep doing our strafe. Witherhoard should be reloaded by now. Got a Witherhoard shot on now. Just re-stun with the scout because I don't want the overload generating health like last time. And finish up with a rocket. So that's the final overload killed. Well, not the final, but the final. Second to last. Because there'll be one overload on this phase here. Same thing again, it's one of those you could die in the air tethering the overload, so I wouldn't risk it unless you're absolutely certain, because you don't get the same resilience that you do with other Roman supers. Well, it's obviously not a Roman super, but you're not getting super resistance is what I'm saying. So you're literally very vulnerable when you're tethering. When you jump in the air and tether, you're very vulnerable, and there's lots of adds up. I would just, like I say, wait until you get a chance to take the overload when there's less adds alive. Like right there, you could probably say I could have tethered, but I didn't risk it because there was stasis coming and all sorts of stuff. So you've got to really look at your surroundings. Is it viable for me to rush this right now? There's an extra void captain as well. Luckily the captain was just dead anyways, because that would be another tether on the floor, so chances are there might be 3 tethers, which can be annoying to play with, because that's going to make all the adds immune. So on this phase there's Scorn that go behind the left and right pillars, which are a pain, so that means the backside of the map isn't as safe as it was on phase 1 and 2. So you've got to pay attention to that, and just in case adds teleport and stuff like this. Try and get damaging when we can. We get stomped there. So you see how quickly it might look like I'm safe, but I'm not. Stuff like that. So you've really got to pay attention to everything. What I want to do right now is get rid of these adds that are behind. Because right now they are actually the pain. They're the biggest threat, not the boss, so to speak. It's the Ravengers that are behind the boxes that are in, basically making my cover useless. There's another ad wave up top. That's fine. It's actually better leaving a couple of ads up because, as I say, you're going to get your smoke. And just taking it with a horde, grenade, that type of deal, and then invising straight away. Got frozen there, if you've seen. So you can see how even they're close enough to you, they can get a freeze on you really quick. Luckily they're not orange bars in this, they're just red bars, which makes things a little easier. We haven't had an opportunity to take down the overload yet, which is why I've left the overload up. If I did though, I would then, once the overload killed, I would ignore ads and then just Witherhoard boss invis, Witherhoard boss invis, and eventually the boss would die. Do it like that, but it never worked out like that because I didn't have a good opportunity to kill the overload. Or shall we say I didn't want to risk the run. It's our opportunity to get some damage in. There's not too many more phases left, to be honest. There's a couple, but not too many. Another fragment that would be kind of good is when you finish a ad, you get invisibility. That would also be really decent. But I prioritize stats more. That's I use certain fragments, and I've got volatile rounds on, which overall in the run was decent. There's a couple of times where it was really helping me, because obviously I'm all void weapons anyways, so. I will say it definitely is easier as opposed to what it was when Birthplace first came out, the solo one. It was very difficult then, but that was because of resilience. What it wasn't working. It wasn't even a stat. It didn't even work. Like people would run like tier 3 resilience and stuff like this because it didn't work like it works now. So that's why it was tough. Not only that, because the room's so small. Don't get me wrong, you can do well on like a Void Sentinel or a Void Walker, but with the way this room's designed, it's so small that you've got to resort to certain builds to get it done solo, which I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of this strike design that they're doing lately with the whole box room bosses. I hate it. What I like is Glassware is a perfect example. Well designed boss fight. Lots of opportunities for covers, lots of opportunities for plays. There's a lot of not randomness, but there's a lot of variations to combat in there. With the Rivens, they push left, they go through middle, stuff like this. This one isn't. This one's cut and dry. It's like, it's a small box room, right? Hunter's gonna have to, should resort to Invis. Voidwalker should resort to Infinite Grenades. Sentinels should resort to Heart of Inmost Light. What about other stuff? Well, it's not that viable because it's this stupid room. And that's what I'm saying. It's not very enjoyable if you have to resort to a certain class to get it done. It doesn't help me be creative, is what I'm saying. It's, like I say, Birthplace is alright on lower difficulties, but as a GM, I'm not too fond of it solo. Team-wise, it's very easy. It's kind of weird. Very easy team-wise, solo-wise. A little bit different because not a lot of cover and stuff. You can hug left, I know that, and the ads will group up a little bit, but stuff like that can happen. You just saw. So it's not cutting. It's not like it doesn't always work if you just stand behind cover like that. You're still going to get stomped by the boss. Stuff like that can happen out of your control a little bit. Overload's still up. This is where we're going to need to, we did use our tether. See, what ends up happening is, I think it's coming up, is I get a stun, but the boss interferes, like right there he's interferes with my aim assist. It's absolute nightmare. So I should have probably stunned with Scout, Witherhoard, then 2 rockets. That would have killed the Overload. What ends up happening is a little bit of a mess, which I'm going to do in a minute. So things look okay right now, things look healthy. Get rid of the tether, get a stun, try and tether around this corner here, but the boss interferes. Some of the tether tracks the boss rather than the champ. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mess. That's fine though, because I've actually noticed the boss here and pushing. So I'm actually stay behind the cover and just get this kill here. So that's actually decent. I didn't really need to tether. I probably should have just saved tether for boss to speed up a little bit of damage here. So that's the only thing where the boss is like running in front of ads and stuff like that. It's so annoying. Now we can finish off the boss though. So that was how to safely do it anyways. This solo on this. I mean, still a solo. Solo's a solo on it. We've got plenty of rockets. So you can see how conservative I've played with rockets. We could just use it basically for all damage, but you could have used it on packs of enemies. I could have done a bit more aggressive play like that, but that was a solo on this. Getting Platinum rank. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.